All right, April 29th. How are we doing today? Today, I think I want to talk about like the next steps. Yesterday was kind of heavy, talking about letting it go and self-limiting beliefs and, um, you know, how we gotta not worry so much about what other people think. We don't want to let them get in our heads. You know what I mean? We want to be able to follow our dreams and do what we want to do and not have that fear. So today I want to talk about like what's the next steps. Okay, so let's say that you let it go. Now what? What do you do? Well, building habits. Okay, being consistent with yourself. That's where I would start personally. A guy doesn't grab a hammer and a couple sticks of lumber and decide he's just going to go build a house. Okay. You sit down at a table and you get a sheet of paper out and you draw the size and you draw what the sides look like and you basically make a diagram, right? So you got to sketch that out, and that's going to be different for everyone depending on what your goals are. But that is where you begin. Okay, you decided you want to do something. You sit down at the table, you get your piece of paper out, and you make your plan, right? And then once you've made your plan, then you do your research and you find out, okay, well, what's all this going to cost me? Do I have a location? You break everything down into little pieces. Okay. I call it the peanut butter and jelly sandwich method, right? How do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Well, you need bread, right? You need 2 slices of bread, right? And you need peanut butter and you need jelly, and you got to put it all together, and then you have a sandwich, right? Okay. Well, anything that you do in life, you got to have somewhat of a schematic to follow. As far as me freestyling this works because I have completed thoughts I've already thought about, and this whole format and everything. I've already sat down and thought about how I wanted to do this, this daily thing. The other thing that goes along with your plan. So the first thing is you're going to want to make sure that you sit down and you make your plan. The second thing you're going to want to do is do your research. Find other people that are in the same market, same sector, same thing, that are actually doing what you're doing. Let's say you wanted to start a pressure washing company. What are you going to do? Are you going to wash houses? You're going to wash driveways? You're going to do commercial lots? Like what exactly are you going to do? Because that's going to dictate what equipment you need. Do you need hot water? Do you have to haul the water? Can you use their water? Do you need detergents and surfactants and things like that? So, and then you want to look in your local area and you want to say, well, is the market saturated? I see a lot of people, they get a wild hair and they go buy a $2,000 pressure washer unit and they set their whole truck all up and they decide this is what I'm going to do, only to find out that either A, they live in an area where there's just no demand, like Arizona. There's not a lot of demand for house washing in Arizona. House washing is going to be in demand in places that are humid. Missouri, southern Kansas, areas, out in like Seattle area. Places that are just wet all the time, they're going to grow a lot more algae and a lot more mold and things like that. So you're going to have a lot more demand for pressure washing fences and pressure washing houses and that kind of thing. That's a great location to start up a business to do that. But if you're in the middle of a desert somewhere and you watch the YouTube video thinking you're going to start a pressure washing company and you'll spend all your money and you'll get all rigged up, and then you'll just starve to death because there's no demand. And then you get online and you're like, well, how come my pressure washer company's not working good? Well, you're talking to people that are making tons of money because they're in the Tennessee foothills down there, you know what I mean? And it's wet and humid all summer long, and there's all kinds of, algae growing. So those guys are gonna have a different market than you. So that's what I mean by doing your research. Whatever it is that you want to do, you need to research your area, find out who your competitors are, find out, if there's a hole in that market that you can fill. Not every great idea is going to work in every location, right? And be willing to pivot. So let's say you've done that and you've done your research, and your area has a shortage of, let's just say, pressure washers, and you want to start that business. So now you've got to build out your rig, right? And you've got to figure out, how are you going to advertise? You've got to figure out, are you going to run off of a website, or are you going to do a Facebook page, or you've got to answer all these questions. Well, and that all happens before you even get your first customer, So you've got a lot of research and a lot of planning that you need to do. And other thing that goes along with this is you don't want to have an unrealistic goal, in that if you say, okay, I'm going to put all my money into this and I need to turn a profit within a month. Well, you're probably going to get disappointed. You're probably, unless you're juiced in, unless you know somebody who's going to hand you a whole bunch of clients, it's going to take a lot longer than that. So you need to have more realistic expectations. I always tell people that start stuff like this, do this in your off time. Turn your hobby into your full-time business. Don't quit your day job. Work on your day job. Then on your 2 or 3 hours every evening, work on your side hustle. And you build your side hustle up slowly. And then when your side hustle gets to the point where it's at least the same amount of income as your day job, then is when you make the decision to switch over and do the side hustle full time. The other thing is consistency. You got to show up every day. Nobody wants to call you back if they called you once and you didn't answer the phone. You got one shot for that customer. They called you, you answer the phone, boom, you booked it. If they called you and you're not consistent, you don't return calls, you don't answer the phone, you don't return emails, well, people will just go somewhere else. They'll go where they're getting the proper service that they want. So, and that goes along with you. Hold yourself to a higher standard. Are you showing up every day, spending that hour or two, doing the research that you need to do to work on this side hustle that you're building, right? Are you someone who shows up for 2 or 3 days and then flakes off for 2 or 3 days? And that's okay, but you need to identify that. You need to identify, that's a weak point for me. And then in that case, that's where I would start. Start on being more consistent. Start on your plan, being more consistent, holding yourself more accountable, and, work the plan. Lay it all out, be realistic with your research, look at where the market says. If the market says that, this is not a good area to start this business, then you should pivot and you should find something else. You're not going to cram that square peg through that round hole. You'll end up just using a lot of money. You'll fail, and it won't be because you had a horrible plan. It will be because you didn't do enough research and you weren't honest with yourself. Not everything is going to fit everywhere. So you gotta, I couldn't just start being a crab fisherman here in Idaho. It wouldn't work, right? I mean, there's no crab in Idaho, right? So, and that becomes, well, that's obvious, right? Well, it should be that obvious for other things, If you live in an area that only has, say, 100,000 people and they've got 3 car washes, and the car washes, there's always a line around the building all the time. Well, that tells you that you could probably build another car wash and you can take some of that heat off of those 3 that exist, right? Now, if you live in an area that has like 1 million people and there's a car wash on every single corner, and every time you go by one, there's never a line, I wouldn't be building another car wash, right? So some of these things are obvious. And that's not, to discourage anyone, but you got to be realistic with what your plan is. You got to make a plan. You've got to be realistic about your timeline on your plan. Is this going to take you 3 months to build? Is it going to take you 6 months to build? Is it going to take you a year to build? You got to be realistic about how much time each day that you can devote to this. And then you got to show up for yourself. Okay. You got to show up, and you got to just, determination. Okay. And really, don't place blame on anyone else. It's not anyone else's fault that you failed. Okay. It's always your own fault if you fail, because you can do anything that you want to do. It's just a matter of how. Money flows where energy goes. So whatever you put energy into, money flows. Okay? It's almost impossible not to be successful if you show up with a good plan and you're consistent. Okay? Those are the 3 things that every good company, every good entrepreneur needs to do. And show me an entrepreneur that doesn't do those 3 things. Show me one, a successful one. Okay. And so I wanted to keep it a little bit lighter than yesterday was kind of a heavy video. And so, I keep it a little bit lighter and give you guys a little, like the next step kind of a thing. And, I've got a website I got to get working on, and I've got some other things that are pressing. Looks like our weather is warming up. We're going to be hitting 79, 80 degrees every day. So, I'm a sun lizard. So when it warms up like this, I just don't want to be inside. So I'm going to hurry up and try to get all my inside work done. And here in the next coming days, I plan on spending a lot of afternoons outside. So we may do some of these, we may do some more of these videos down by the river or whatever, because I'm about to get this fishing pole out and I'm going to go fishing, and we're going to be doing some other things. Don't worry about what's going on in the world. You can't control none of it. Best you could do is worry about yourself and your family, and be consistent. Show up for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else. Do it for you. That's about all I got for you guys today. Think about something tomorrow, and I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll go from there. On the space weather, we've had a string of minor small flares, M1s, M2s. I think M7 was the biggest one. Some of them were earth directed. Some of them had small CME stuff. It doesn't look like nothing major for disturbances. We might get a little bit of activity here in the next day or two. If the KP elevates and we get, a level 1 geomagnetic storm or something like that, I'll make sure I update, or I'll leave a post with some data on that stuff and let you guys know. What else we need to touch on? I don't know. It's just so nice. I'm having a hard time even sitting here in this garage. I need to get outside. So hopefully everyone made it through. There was some really gnarly weather out in Indiana last night. There was some tornado warnings. I got some friends out that way, and they were pretty close to stuff. So I hope that everyone was safe, and I hope that everybody weathered the storm, and I'm hoping that you guys get out of that and can get into some nice weather here real soon. Other than that, that's about it. Love you. Have a good one. Bye.